flickering shadows. The first encounter with the ultimate silence, a companion who just yesterday hunted by your side, now lies perfectly still. No marks, no struggles, just an unmoving form growing colder by the second in the deep chill of the cavern. What unseen force could steal the essence of life so quietly? You touch the familiar skin. You trace the rugged lines of a face you know so well, but your desperate calls vanish into the void. There is no response, no reflex. The person inside has simply vanished without a trace. Flash forward, a quiet, modern room. The same heavy silence falls over a polished wooden box. We still stand paralyzed by this philosophical void. A physical shell remains, taking up space, yet the spark is gone. 10,000 years of progress, yet the same crushing helplessness remains. The primal mind, wired entirely for survival, begins to frantically search for an explanation. If a body can just stop working, without a predator in sight, then a new kind of terror is born. An invisible thief has entered the camp, and if it can take the strongest among us, without a sound, without a struggle, then who is it coming for next in the dark? The darkness is no longer just an absence of light. It becomes a canvas for the mind, painting monstrous shapes where there is only empty space. In the ancient world, a sudden rustle in the tall, dry grass could be a mere breeze, or it could be a silent predator, crouching low, waiting to strike when you least expect it. For our ancestors, guessing wrong and ignoring the sound carried a terrible price, the ultimate loss of the future. But overreacting, fleeing from shadows, that only cost a little energy. Evolution made its choice. It forged a brain wired to see deliberate intent behind every mystery, a psychological alarm system we now call the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device. Fast forward to a modern city night. The same primal alarm rings within us. A shadow cast by a coat rack against the bedroom wall feels inexplicably menacing, as if an ancient stalker has followed us across millennia, hiding in the corners of our modern sanctuaries. When faced with the unexplainable stillness of a fallen companion, this survival instinct kicked into overdrive. It whispered a chilling narrative. There is a hidden culprit, an unseen hunter responsible for this tragedy, a malicious force that stole their breath and now roams freely among the living. And if it is still hungry, still watching from the void. The realization was absolute and terrifying. The body on the ground was no longer a friend. It was a vessel, an empty shell left behind in the cold dark. And if an unseen hunter could steal life so effortlessly, what was stopping it from crawling inside that shell and making it rise again? In the primal mind, the fallen form became a ticking time bomb, a direct physical threat to the entire tribe. The silence of the dead was no longer peaceful. It was the silence before an ambush. We feel echoes of this same dread today. The unsettling chill when you are alone in a quiet house and the shadows seem to lengthen. Our logical mind knows there is nothing there, yet our ancient instincts scream that the dead might not be truly gone, that the vessel might still move. For our ancestors, this wasn't a horror story. It was an urgent, practical crisis. If the unseen force decides to return to the cold flesh, it would tear through the camp, unleashing the ultimate disaster. They had to act. The vessel had to be sealed. The terror of the unseen force demanded a physical, desperate response. To stop the fallen vessel from ever standing again, they sought the heaviest burdens the earth could offer. Massive boulders, requiring the strained effort of many, were dragged into the dark and placed deliberately over the chest and hips of the silent form. Fast forward to a quiet cemetery today. The raw panic is gone, but the heavy architecture remains. We still place massive slabs of polished marble over our fallen, an echoing tradition from a time when the stone was meant to act as a physical cage. But weight alone was not always enough to soothe the ancient paranoia. In countless primitive graves, we find the silent forms bound tightly, limbs forced into a painful, crouched position, like a captive heavily secured in the earth. This wasn't merely to save space. It was a desperate, magical seal, a frantic effort to ensure the legs could never stretch out and the companion could never walk again. We feel a ghost of this confinement today, when grief traps us in the narrow halls of our own minds, unable to move forward, paralyzed by the overwhelming weight of memory. The silent prayer echoing around those ancient boulders wasn't for peace. It was a trembling plea. Please, do not return. But sometimes, the terror ran far deeper than stone or vine. As we dig into ancient earth, we find chilling evidence of an absolute, unyielding panic. At sites like Göbekli Tepe, the fallen were not just buried, they were systematically dismantled. To ensure the vessel could never rise, the very seat of identity was separated from the body entirely. Without a head, the wandering spirit could not find its way back to the shell, and without a jaw, the form could never bite or consume the living. This wasn't malice or cruelty. It was the purest form of defensive desperation, a tragic distortion of humanity, driven by a universe they could not comprehend. Today, we recoil at these grim, ancient rites, yet the psychological reflex remains intact. When grief threatens to consume us, we sometimes commit our own silent dismantling, cutting off memories, burning old photographs, forcefully separating ourselves from the past. We tear away the parts of our history that hurt too much to look at, desperately trying to disarm the ghost of a memory before it can strike us. The absolute fear of the unknown can warp even the deepest bonds of love. But amidst this suffocating landscape of terror, a different color suddenly emerges. In the dusty depths of Shanidar Cave, a discovery shook the world. Surrounding a fallen companion from 60,000 years ago were clusters of brightly colored pollen, carefully scattered in the earth. It painted a breathtakingly romantic picture of our ancestors, not as brute survivors, but as beings capable of weeping, gathering fragile wild blooms to soothe the journey of a silent friend. Today we mirror this exact instinct. We bring delicate petals to cold stones, desperately trying to inject warmth and beauty into the ultimate void. Yet, the harsh light of modern science often breaks the spell. Recent studies suggest these ancient flowers weren't placed by grieving hands, but were merely hoarded by small, burrowing rodents, building their nests in the deep earth. A mundane truth, threatening to erase the poetry of the first funeral. But why do we cling to this flower myth so desperately? Because we need to believe that compassion is older than fear. But the true essence of our humanity is not found in the crushing weight of stones. It is found in a small, quiet resting place at a site called Ain Malaha, where 12,000 years ago, an elderly woman was laid to rest in the earth. Her bony arms were arranged to form a gentle, protective embrace, and curled up peacefully beneath her hands was a tiny, sleeping puppy. To the ancient hunter-gatherer, a dog was not merely a pet. It was an invaluable survival tool, a fierce guardian, a tracker of vital sustenance. To part with a healthy young animal, simply to bury it with the fallen, was an immense, irrational loss of resources in a brutal, unforgiving world. Yet, they did it anyway. They looked past the cold math of survival, choosing to honor a profound bond, offering her a faithful companion for the long dark. We perform this exact irrational math today. We place cherished photographs, letters, and small trinkets beside the polished wood, parting with pieces of our own hearts. Here lies the ultimate psychological paradox of our species. Half the tribe traps the fallen in fear, while the other half weeps, ensuring they never walk alone. How do we reconcile this storm? Torn between these two impossible extremes, the absolute terror of the returning shadow and the desperate yearning for their peace. The ancient tribe needed a bridge, a brave figure who could step into the void and negotiate a fragile truce between the living and the overwhelming silence. Deep inside a cavern known as Hilazon Taktit, we find the dawn of this profound role. A woman with a unique, hunched form laid to rest with an arrangement of extraordinary, highly enigmatic artifacts. Dozens of ancient tortoise shells, the massive, imposing wings of a golden eagle, and sacred animal relics surrounded her fragile form in a deliberate, magical circle. She was not merely a hunter, she was something entirely new. A powerful shaman, an ethereal intermediary boldly entrusted to walk the most perilous line imaginable, gently guiding the bewildered souls to their rest, while fiercely commanding the shadows to stay far away from the living. We instinctively seek out this exact same psychological archetype today, especially when the silence becomes far too heavy to bear alone. The modern therapist, the empathetic priest, the quiet guide sitting patiently across from us, helping us build a mental boundary so the ghosts of our memory no longer haunt us. Over millennia, the isolated rituals of the shaman evolved. Whispered superstitions and frantic attempts to bury the dark slowly crystallized into something grander. They merged into a vast, intricate architecture of belief, rules, and sacred taboos. We gave the unseen forces names, faces, and ultimate authority, creating a divine hierarchy to govern the chaos, and constructed the profound concept we now revere as religion. At its core, this was never merely a naive misunderstanding of nature. It was, and remains, the most sophisticated psychological technology our species ever invented. When the weight of losing a companion became too immense for a single mind to bear, without shattering, the tribe gathered around the fire, shared the burden, and transformed a silent tragedy into a communal anchor. The modern funeral serves the exact same vital function today. We halt our busy lives, gather in quiet rooms, and share meals in the presence of memory, allowing the collective embrace of the group to stitch our fractured realities back together. We weep together so that no one goes mad alone in the dark. We have mapped the stars and decoded the genome, yet this ancient anchor holds us firmly in place. But if we know the physical form is truly gone, why do we still light the incense? It leads us to a heartbreaking, yet profoundly beautiful realization about our own nature. Perhaps the ultimate architect in the sky was not forged because the universe demanded a ruler, but because the human heart is simply too fragile. We cherish our bonds so fiercely that we refuse to accept the finality of the void, choosing to build a bridge to eternity rather than say a permanent goodbye. So, as our ancient ancestors once cleared the stones and offered their finest provisions to the flickering flames, praying that the wandering spirit might follow the warmth back home, we too light our modern incense, holding on to the same impossible, beautiful hope, a paradox of love and fear, perfectly preserved across 10,000 years. Do not return to us in the shadows, but please, find your way back in the light. If you have felt the echo of this ancient struggle today, if this journey through our shared darkness has sparked a light within you, leave a sign that you were here. Subscribe and join the tribe. Let us keep this fire burning, sharing the stories that bind us together so we never have to face the ultimate silence alone.